Mildred Okafor, a virgin raised by her dying uncle, a former pastor, worked secretly at Club Deluxe to pay for his cancer treatments, lying that she worked at a hospital. Jae-ha Kim, a bored Korean mafia heir, noticed her innocence and decided to corrupt it, giving her 3 weeks before she'd be his. He awakened dark desires in her through psychological seduction, gifts, touch, surveillance, and eventually paying $50,000 for her uncle's life-saving surgery with no strings attached. On the final night, he gave her a hotel key card and an ultimatum. Meet him at midnight for 3 days together or never see him again. Welcome back, everyone, to part 2. If you're returning from part 1, thank you so much for coming back. You already know how intense things got between Mildred and Jae-ha, and trust me, what happens next is going to absolutely blow your mind. New viewers, before you dive in, I need you to stop right here and click the link in the description below to watch part 1 first. Seriously, if you skip it, you're going to be completely lost. You need to understand how we got to this moment, the secrets, the seduction, the $50,000 surgery, and that hotel key card that changed everything. And while you're here, hit that like button and smash subscribe. You're about to go on one of the wildest, most sensual rides this channel has ever delivered, and you definitely don't want to miss what comes next. Now, let's dive in. The staff room clock read 11:45 p.m. when Mildred finally let herself look at the key card. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The plastic rectangle felt impossibly heavy, like it contained the weight of every choice she'd ever made and every choice she was about to make. 3 days with him. 3 days of whatever darkness he wanted to show her, whatever he wanted to take from her. Her body remembered his hands, the way he touched her that last night at the club. Careful, deliberate, like he was learning her. She felt things she didn't have names for, wants that made her ashamed even as they pooled hot and insistent in her belly. Uncle Desmond's face flashed through her mind, his gentle voice reading scripture at the breakfast table, the way he'd smile when she came home, asking about her day at the hospital. Every lie she told him sat like stones in her throat, but Jae-ha had paid $50,000. No strings attached, he'd said, except the string, this single thread connecting her to him, pulling taut. I'll go, she whispered to the empty room. But first I need to go home and change. The taxi ride felt endless and too short all at once. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She imagined walking into that hotel room, imagined him waiting for her. Would he be angry she was late? Would he punish her for it? The thought sent heat spiraling through her, shameful and intoxicating. She pressed her thighs together, trying to calm the thrum of nervous energy singing through her veins. Just freshen up. Put on something nice. Then go to him. Simple. She could do this. She wanted to do this. The house was blazing with light when the taxi pulled up. Every window glowed against the darkness. Mildred's stomach dropped. Uncle Desmond never stayed up past 9, never wasted electricity like this. She paid the driver with trembling hands and walked to the door. Uncle Desmond sat in his armchair like a judge awaiting verdict. On the coffee table between them, carefully laid out, was her Club Deluxe uniform, the short black skirt, the low-cut top, the name tag that said Millie. The world tilted sideways. What is this, Mildred? His voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. This is not a hospital uniform. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. 8 months of lies crowded on her tongue, choking her. A club. He picked up the top between 2 fingers like it burned him. You've been lying to me for 8 months? Working in a place of sin? Dancing for men? Serving alcohol too, his voice cracked. How could you? Uncle, please, I can explain. Explain. He stood, swaying slightly, his face gray with pain and betrayal. What explanation justifies this? Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Proverbs 4 verse 14. I raised you better than this. Your parents trusted me with you when they died. They trusted me to keep you on the righteous path. The money, the words burst from her. The bills, the treatments, the medications. I couldn't let you die. The hospital job wasn't enough, wasn't even close, and you were dying, and there's always another way. He slammed his hand on the armrest. A righteous way. God provides for those who trust in him. My God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory. God wasn't paying your medical bills. She was crying now, ugly and desperate. God wasn't stopping the cancer. I was me, working doubles, smiling at drunk men, letting them think they had a chance if they tipped well enough. Uncle Desmond clutched his chest. His face went from gray to white. You've broken my heart, child. He gasped, reaching for her. You've broken. He collapsed before he could finish the sentence. Mildred's scream tore through the house. She dropped beside him, hands scrabbling for her phone, dialing 911. pressing her shaking fingers to his neck to find a pulse. His head had cracked against the coffee table on the way down. Blood pooled beneath him, sticky and dark. "Uncle, please stay with me." The operator's voice was distant, asking questions she could barely answer. She followed instructions for CPR, her tears falling onto his gray face, her hands pumping his chest in rhythm she'd learned years ago and prayed she'd never need. The ambulance screamed through the night. Mildred sat in the back, her hands and clothes covered in his blood, watching the paramedics work. The hotel key card was still in her pocket. She could feel it there, a small hard reminder of the choice she'd tried to make. "I did this," she thought numbly. "I killed him. For what? For him?" The ER waiting room was fluorescent bright and antiseptic cold. Mildred sat in a plastic chair. Uncle Desmond's blood dried brown on her hands and stared at nothing. Her phone said 1:47 a.m. She'd missed midnight by nearly 2 hours. Jeha's contact information was right there in her phone. She could call him. Explain. He would understand, wouldn't he? Or maybe he'd be angry. Maybe the deal was off. Maybe she'd lost both of them in one night. Her thumb hovered over his name. But calling him would mean something. It would mean that even now, even with Uncle Desmond fighting for his life behind those surgical doors, even covered in his blood and drowning in guilt, even now, she still wanted Jeha. Still craved whatever corruption he'd promised her. She couldn't admit that. Not even to herself. The phone screen went dark. 72 hours, the doctors said. The next 72 hours would tell them if Uncle Desmond would survive. Mildred didn't leave the hospital. She sat in the ICU waiting room, watching the minutes crawl by. Church friends came with casseroles and condolences. Their judgment hung in the air like incense. "I heard she works at a nightclub. Poor Pastor Desmond. Dying of shame, probably. That's what happens when you raise someone else's child. No real discipline." The whispers followed her to the vending machines, to the bathroom, back to her vigil. She was alone in her guilt, drowning in it. At night, when Uncle Desmond's monitors beeped their steady rhythm and the nurses dimmed the lights, Mildred would stare at her phone. She drafted messages she never sent. "I'm sorry I didn't come." Delete. "My uncle found out." Delete. "I wanted to come to you." Delete. If she contacted him now, she was admitting she was choosing him over Uncle Desmond, admitting she was really that far gone. That even with death hovering close, with guilt crushing her chest, with everything falling apart, she still burned for him. The messages stayed unsent. The silence stretched. And somewhere across the city, in a hotel room she'd never seen, Jeha waited for an answer that never came. Day 3 in the hospital arrived with gray morning light filtering through the ICU windows. Mildred had stopped counting the hours somewhere around 48, her body running on vending machine coffee and guilt. When Uncle Desmond's eyes finally opened, she nearly collapsed with relief. "Mildred." His voice was paper thin, barely audible over the beeping monitors. She grabbed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here. I'm right here." He studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the exhaustion carved into every feature, the blood still crusted under her fingernails despite 3 days of washing. What happened? The dam broke. Everything she'd been holding in for 3 days came flooding out. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But Uncle, the club. It's the only reason we've survived." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, showing him the spreadsheets she'd kept hidden for 8 months. His medication costs, the surgery bill, their rent, the utilities, the food, the copays that insurance wouldn't cover. "Without that job, you'd be dead already." Her voice cracked. "The club saved your life. That money I told you came from overtime at the hospital? It came from serving drinks to businessmen and dancing on stage. Every dollar went to keeping you alive." Uncle Desmond stared at the numbers for a long moment. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. "And your soul? What price did you pay for my life?" The question hung between them like smoke. Nothing changed. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. "I serve drinks. I come home. I still pray. I'm still the same girl you raised." Uncle Desmond studied her face, his gaze sharp despite his weakness. The silence stretched until Mildred wanted to scream. "You're lying," he said finally, soft and sad. "I can see it in your eyes. Something has changed." Mildred looked away, unable to meet his gaze. He sighed, the sound rattling in his chest. "I don't like it. I'll never like it." But he squeezed her hand weakly. "I trust you. You're all I have left in this world. Don't make me regret this trust." They embraced, careful of his 4 lines and monitors. Mildred buried her face in his shoulder and cried, knowing she was still lying to him, knowing that somewhere across the city, a man waited who had awakened things in her that couldn't be undone. The guilt was suffocating. Across the city, Jeha poured his 4th whiskey of the night and watched the clock tick past 3 a.m. The first night, He'd waited at the penthouse until dawn. He'd sat in the bedroom he'd prepared, silk sheets, champagne on ice, her favorite flowers arranged on every surface, and watched the minutes crawl by. When the sun rose and she still hadn't come, he'd felt something cold settle in his chest. She made her choice. He should have accepted it. Moved on. He'd played the game before with other women, and when they didn't bite, he'd simply found new prey. But as days passed, that cold acceptance curdled into something uglier. Obsession. He drank more, worked less, snapped at his crew over minor infractions. Yesterday he'd nearly broken Minjun's jaw for laughing at the wrong moment. Hyung, you're losing control over a woman. Taeyong had cornered him in his office, concern etched on his face. This isn't like you. She's not just a woman. Jae had heard himself say it and hated how desperate it sounded. She's different. He'd pulled strings, made calls, accessed hospital records he had no business seeing. Uncle Desmond admitted to the ER at 2:17 a.m. Critical condition. She'd chosen her uncle over him, exactly as he'd known she would. That should have made it easier. Should have proved she was just like everyone else, predictable, moral, boring. Instead it made it worse, because he didn't know if she'd wanted to come. Didn't know if she'd stood outside that hotel wrestling with the choice, if she'd thought about him while her uncle lay dying. The not knowing was driving him insane. He'd stayed away from Club Deluxe, honoring his ultimatum. If you don't come, you never see me again. Those were the rules. He'd set them himself. But every night he sat in his penthouse with his phone on the table beside him, screen up, volume on high, waiting for a text that never came. His crew had never seen him like this. Unraveled, obsessed, barely holding onto the control that had always defined him. I should forget her, he muttered to his empty glass. Move on. There are 1,000 women, but none of them were her. None of them had looked at him with that perfect mixture of fear and want. None of them had made him feel like a hunter again. Uncle Desmond came home on a Tuesday. Mildred settled him into his room with strict instructions from the doctors about rest and medication schedules. That night, she returned to Club Deluxe with her heart in her throat. She scanned the VIP section the moment she clocked in. Empty. No Jae. The second night, nothing. The third night, still nothing. You've been distracted since you came back, Sujin commented during their break. Everything okay? Fine, Mildred lied, adjusting the fallen angel necklace at her throat. She hadn't taken it off since the hospital. Just tired. But tired was a lie too. She was consumed. Her dreams had become pornographic. She woke tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, body aching with unfulfilled need. Having dreamed of Jaeha's hands pushing up her thighs, his mouth hot on her neck, his voice promising to ruin her. Before, she would have fallen to her knees in prayer, begging forgiveness for such thoughts. Now, she just lay there in the dark, replaying the dreams, wanting more. She'd stopped wearing the cardigan over her club dress, started applying her makeup darker, heavier. The diamond earrings he'd given her sparkled in her ears every shift. She was preparing for him, hoping each night would be the night he appeared. At home, Uncle Desmond watched her with worried eyes. You seem different, distant, just tired from work, she said, kissing his forehead before heading to her shift. But as she walked to the club, the fallen angel necklace cold against her skin, she knew she was lying again. She wasn't tired. She was starving. And every night she didn't see Jae, the hunger grew sharper. 1 week after the missed deadline, Mildred stood outside the Shilla Hotel, staring up at the gleaming tower like it might swallow her whole. She told herself 100 times during the taxi ride that she just needed to explain. He deserved to know why she hadn't come that night. That was all. Just talk. Clear the air. Then she could move on with her life. But standing here now, key card burning in her palm, she knew it was a lie. She was terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Part of her prayed nothing would happen. That he'd accept her explanation and let her go. That she could return to her life, to Uncle Desmond, to pretending she was still the good girl she'd been raised to be. The other part, the darker, louder part that had been growing stronger every night, desperately wished he'd devour her the moment she walked through the door. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt eternal. Her reflection in the polished doors showed a woman she'd barely recognized. The fallen angel necklace glinted at her throat. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She slid the key card through the reader. The lock clicked. The door opened. Jae stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, whiskey glass in hand, silhouetted against the Seoul skyline. He didn't turn immediately when she entered. The silence stretched until she thought she might scream. When he finally turned, his eyes were dark, dangerous, barely controlled. You're 1 week late. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her prepared speech died on her tongue. He crossed to the bar with deliberate slowness, every movement controlled. He poured amber liquid into a crystal glass, the sound of whiskey hitting glass obscenely loud in the quiet room. He pointed to the leather chair across from his. Sit. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Her legs carried her forward before her brain could protest. She sat, acutely aware of how short her dress was, how exposed she felt under his gaze. He took his seat, eyes never leaving her face. What were you trying to do, Mildred? Make me beg. I just wanted to explain. Before she could finish, he was moving. The distance between them disappeared in seconds. His hand wrapped around the small of her back, pulling her from the chair and against his body. Hard muscle and heat and the scent of whiskey and expensive cologne. She gasped, her body betraying her immediately, molding to him. You had 1 week to explain, Mildred. His voice was low, dangerous, a purr against her ear. Let me show you what happens when you make Jeha wait. His mouth found her neck, not her lips, deliberate torture. Hot, open-mouthed kisses traced the line of her throat, each one sending electricity straight through her core. His tongue flicked against her pulse point and she whimpered, the sound escaping before she could stop it. His other hand slid up her thigh, fingers burning through the thin fabric of her dress, pushing it higher, inch by torturous inch. She was trembling, caught between resistance and surrender. Her hands pushed weakly at his chest, even as her body arched into him, seeking more contact, more heat, more everything. Stop, her mind screamed. Don't stop, her body begged. Please. His teeth grazed her neck, not quite biting, and another moan escaped her lips. She'd never made sounds like this before. Didn't know she could. His hand squeezed her thigh, possessive and demanding, fingers digging into soft flesh. She felt herself melting, breaking, about to shatter completely. Her legs parted without her permission, making room for him, inviting him closer. His hand slid higher, thumb brushing the edge of her underwear, and the reality of what was happening crashed through her fog of desire. Please stop. The words escaped so quietly she wasn't sure she'd said them aloud. But he heard. His hand began to withdraw from her thigh, slowly, giving her time to take the words back. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. Her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist, holding his hand in place against her heated skin. The room went silent except for their breathing. They both froze, staring at her hand gripping his. Her fingers looked small and pale against his tan skin. She was holding him there, keeping him from leaving, contradicting her own words with her actions. A slow, wicked smile spread across Jeha's face. You were begging in the wrong context. He pulled his hand away completely, the loss of contact making her actually whimper. He stood, adjusting his shirt with maddening calm, every movement precise while she sat there trembling and confused and aching. He looked down at her, dress hiked up, lips parted, eyes glazed with want, and his smile turned predatory. I won't take your innocence until you beg me for it. He repeated the words from weeks ago, each one deliberate. Until you admit what you really are. He walked to the door, opened it wide. His guard stood in the hallway, professional and blank-faced. Take Miss Okafor home. She sat there, speechless, her body still thrumming with unfulfilled need. The space between her thighs ached. Her neck burned where his mouth had been. He didn't look at her as the guards waited, didn't acknowledge her presence at all anymore, as if she'd already ceased to exist to him. She had no choice but to stand on shaking legs and walk past him, out the door, into the elevator with 2 silent men who'd witnessed her humiliation. As the doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of him, back at the window, whiskey glass raised to his lips, completely unbothered. She pressed her thighs together in the elevator, trying to ease the ache he'd left behind. But it was useless. He'd lit a fire in her that wouldn't be extinguished by anything except what he was withholding. And they both knew it. Mildred sat in the back of Jeha's car, watching Soul's lights blur past the tinted windows. The leather seat was cool against her overheated skin. Her heart raced, a frantic drumbeat that wouldn't slow. Her body still hummed with unsatisfied need. Every nerve ending felt raw, exposed. The place where his hand had been on her thigh burned, like a brand. Her neck tingled where his mouth had traced fire across her skin. The realization crashed over her in waves, each one more devastating than the last. She'd gone there to explain. That's what she'd told herself during the entire taxi ride. She was just going to tell him about Uncle Desmond, about the emergency, about why she couldn't make it that night. But she didn't explain anything. She barely spoke at all. And now she was leaving even more desperate than before, her body aching for something she'd never had, craving a corruption she'd been taught to fear. The question haunted her, whispering through her mind like poison. Is that why I really went there in the first place? She looked down at her hands, still shaking in her lap. Remember the way she grabbed his wrist when he started to pull away. The desperation in that gesture. The raw, honest need. Please stop becoming don't stop in the span of a single heartbeat. She was losing herself. Piece by piece, choice by choice, lie by lie. And the terrifying part? The part that made her want to scream and cry and laugh all at once? She didn't want to be found. Stop here, please, she said to the driver when they were still a block from her house. I'll walk the rest. The driver nodded, pulling to the curb. She climbed out on trembling legs, adjusting her dress, trying to compose herself. But when she turned toward home, her heart dropped. Uncle Desmond stood at the living room window, a silhouette backlit by every light in the house. Watching, waiting. She'd been caught. The walk to the front door felt like a death march. Her hand shook as she turned the knob, hoping against hope that maybe he'd gone to bed, that she'd been mistaken about the figure in the window. But Uncle Desmond sat in his armchair, hands folded in his lap. All the lights on. Again. Where were you? She froze in the doorway. I went for a walk. A walk. His voice was quiet, controlled, which somehow made it worse. In a car like that? With a driver. Her mind scrambled for another lie, but she was so tired of lying. Who was that man, Mildred? She couldn't answer. Her throat had closed completely. Uncle Desmond stood slowly, using the armrest for support. His voice started shaking with anger and disappointment. First, I discover you've been lying to me for 8 months, working in a club instead of a hospital. He was shaking now, barely containing himself. Then I nearly die from the shock of your deception. Uncle, please. And now you sneak out in the middle of the night to meet strange men, come home smelling like he stopped himself, but the accusation hung in the air between them. Expensive cologne, whiskey, sin. Mildred stood frozen, unable to defend herself because he was right. Every word was true. Uncle Desmond walked to the mantel where a photo of young Mildred with her parents sat in a silver frame. He picked it up with trembling hands, stared at it for a long moment. Your mother was my baby sister. His voice was thick with emotion. When she died, when they both died in that accident, I promised them I would raise you right. He traced a finger over the glass, over the smiling face of the sister he'd lost. I promised I would keep you pure, keep you safe, keep you close to God. He set the photo down carefully, turned to face her. Tears shone in his eyes. I have failed. Not just them, but you and God. That's not true, Uncle. You've been wonderful. Then why are you doing this? He took a step toward her. Why are you throwing away everything I taught you? Everything you are. I'm not throwing anything away. You're sneaking around with men, coming home in the dead of night, lying to my face. The words echoed through the small house, bouncing off walls that had only ever heard prayers and scripture readings. Silence fell between them, heavy and suffocating. Uncle Desmond's breathing was labored, his hand moving to clutch his chest. Mildred saw the pain cross his face and moved toward him instinctively. Uncle, your heart. Please calm down. Don't. He held up a hand, stopping her dead. Don't you dare use my health as an excuse for your behavior. The words cut deeper than she thought possible. He straightened up, and when he spoke again, his voice was eerily calm. The kind of calm that comes before devastating storms. I have tried to be patient. I have tried to understand. I've prayed and prayed for guidance. He walked to stand directly in front of her, close enough that she could see the tears threatening to spill from his eyes. And God has given me clarity. Mildred's heart pounded, so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You have a choice to make, Mildred. Tonight. Right now. Choice. The word came out as barely a whisper. Yes. A simple one. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady as stone. You can choose righteousness. Or you can choose sin. Uncle, it's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. His control broke for a moment, voice rising to fill the room. You either come back to God, back to your faith, back to the life of purity I raised you for. He took a shaky breath, composing himself. Or you continue down this path of destruction with whatever man has poisoned your mind and corrupted your soul. Mildred's legs felt weak. She gripped the back of a chair for support. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to choose. Right here. Right now. He walked to the couch, sat down heavily. For the first time since his hospital stay, he looked old, frail, defeated. If you choose righteousness, if you promise me you will stop seeing this man, quit that club, return to church, and live as a woman of God should, then we can heal. We can rebuild. I can forgive you. Hope flickered in Mildred's chest. She could do that. She could walk away from Jeha, from Club Deluxe, from all of it. She could go back to being the good girl. She could. But if you choose to continue this sinful life, the hope died as quickly as it had sparked. then you cannot live under my roof any longer. The words hit her like a physical blow. The room tilted sideways. You're kicking me out? I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you a choice. His voice broke on the last word. But I will not enable your fall from grace. I will not sit here and watch the devil take you piece by piece. Tears streamed down Mildred's face, hot and fast. Uncle, please. You're all I have. Where would I go? You should have thought of that before you started sneaking around with strange men in the middle of the night. The coldness in his voice was unbearable. Uncle Desmond stood, walked to his bedroom door, stopped with his hand on the knob, didn't turn around. You have until sunrise to decide. Sunrise? That's only a few hours. That's more than enough time to know where your heart truly lies. With God or with the devil. Uncle, please, can't we just talk about this? There's nothing to talk about, child. You either choose the light or you choose the darkness. You either stay and live righteously or you leave and face whatever consequences come with your sin. He finally turned to look at her. The pain in his eyes was unbearable, raw and honest and utterly devastating. I love you, Mildred. I have always loved you, but I love your soul more than I love your presence in my life. What does that mean? It means I would rather lose you to the world than lose you to hell while you're still under my roof. The finality in his voice was terrifying. This wasn't a threat or an empty ultimatum. This was a man who had made his peace with losing everything. If you choose to leave, if you choose him, whoever he is, then you leave with nothing of mine. No money, no support, no contact. The words fell like stones into deep water, sinking into a place she couldn't reach. You'd really disown me? I'd really let you go. The distinction was subtle but devastating. I will pray for you every day. I will weep for you every night. But I will not enable your destruction. He opened his bedroom door. Sunrise, Mildred. Choose wisely. This decision will define the rest of your life. The door closed. She heard the lock click. And Mildred was left standing alone in the living room, caught between two impossible choices. Behind her, the front door that led to Jeha, to desire, corruption, and terrifying freedom. Ahead of her, Uncle Desmond's locked bedroom door. Safety, righteousness, and a life that suddenly felt like a cage. The fallen angel necklace felt heavy around her throat. Outside, the sky was still dark, but dawn was coming, and when it arrived, she would have to choose. So what do you think Mildred will choose? Will she stay with Uncle Desmond and return to the life of righteousness he raised her for? Or will she walk out that door toward Jeha and the dark desires he's awakened in her? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And if you're as obsessed with this story as I am, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because part 3 is going to be explosive and you do not want to miss what happens next. Trust me, the choice she makes will change everything.